This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, it's very windy here. Hope this message comes through relatively clearly. Just walked out the cinema watching Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, as it's now called, previously known as Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2. I know you saw it a week ago and you didn't send me a voice note, which sort of speaks volumes. I think we've had some light interaction about the movie since then, and I've kind of read between the lines. I don't know, there's magical music playing. Don't you hate when there's like a outdoor parking area and they've got music? It's like, it's the outdoors, man. I need your music. And anyway, I've kind of read between the lines that you didn't like the movie. And we haven't talked about it, as we never do when one of us hasn't actually seen the film. But it's obviously a film that both of us were very hyped for. I think both of us are, let's just say, lifelong fans of the series. We weren't born in 1996, but we are. We've been fans for as much of our life as possible. I actually went to see the first Mission Impossible movie in the cinema with my older cousin, which is the real kind of special memory, a special moment. Just getting to go to see like the big new movie on the Friday night, and it's cool. It's got guns. It's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, been a fan for a long time, and I guess. It's a good franchise to have been a fan of. It's very, very rare that you kind of go see a movie in the cinema, love it, and then the sequels continue to hold up, as opposed to just increasingly diminishing returns until you reach a point where you're like, I just can't watch this anymore. And it felt like we were getting there a couple of years ago when Dead Reckoning, as it's now called, Dead Reckoning Part 1, as it was previously called, came out. And it was a pretty bad movie, but I still maintained some excitement about the final reckoning when it was on the horizon. Some form of excitement. And then that was kind of quashed when I rewatched Dead Reckoning about a week ago, and it was so much worse than even I had remembered it. But and so that made me think, oh well, Jesus Christ, that was such a mess. I wonder how bad Final Reckoning is going to be. But it's a funny old thing. Like when I watched Dead Reckoning in the cinema when it was released. Actually, you know what? Let me go back. Let me just talk you through my experiences with the movies. First one, adored it when it came out. Have adored it every time I've checked in it ever since. Kind of evergreen movie that holds up. No matter what kind of lens you're looking through it, I think it's the best in the franchise. We recently discussed our rankings, so I know we largely agree on a certain quality ranking of the movies. Anyway, first one, amazing, masterpiece, best movie in the franchise, really good. Second one, I enjoyed it when I saw it in the cinema, when I was like the absolute perfect age to enjoy that movie. I know people hate on it big time. I remember watching it a few times when I was younger and enjoying it, and then I kind of like have gone through decades of people telling me that it's shit, but me not really double checking that. So to an extent, I've kind of bought that line, and I've gone, okay, it was a bad one. But then, on the other hand, to be completely fair to it, I haven't actually gone back and checked it myself. So I have a kind of like reserved opinion on that movie, because I feel like it's unfair for me to say that it's a bad movie, because I've liked it the times that I've seen it. But I also remember not liking it nearly as much as the likes of Face Off even Broken Arrow, like the John Woo movies of that era. So yeah, I'm not going to go to bat for it, but I also I wouldn't be surprised if it's better than people give it credit for. Mission Impossible 3, loved when it came out, loved when I've revisited it. Ghost Protocol felt it was a bit of a drop down because it didn't have Philip Seymour Hoffman, but it was still a good movie. And then upon revisiting it, I really liked it. And then Rogue Nation, I think is a bit of a step down, but then it's still a decent movie. I think that's the one with Alec Baldwin and Jeremy Renner kind of like doing like sort of debating about, and like I think they impersonate the Prime Minister of England. So it's got fun stuff in it. And then Fallout, have an amazing time in the cinemas. Probably my second favorite Mission Impossible movie. I do think that it was the first sign of this chaotic, crazy screenwriting style that Chris McQuarrie has. Nice. Where they basically shoot the movie without any plot worked out, and then come up with the plot after they've shot the movie, and then just shoot a few expository scenes to sprinkle in here and there. And it showed the signs of that, but it was just so good. The action was so good. Everything just, well, not everything worked. Enough worked to distract from things that don't work. And then when I revisited it, it's definitely fallen down because it's falling down from such a high height. As I said, that first trip to the cinema seeing Fallout was just incredible. And it's definitely like fallen down a few spots from that lofty height of like I said, thinking it was incredible. I do think it's brilliant, and it's the second best in the franchise for me. But yeah, it probably hyped me up to a unreachable level for Dead Reckoning when that came out. And Dead Reckoning is just a bad movie. I mean, it's one of the worst Tom Cruise movies. It's worse than Night and Day. It's worse than American Made. It's worse than, I don't know, like Lions for Lambs, all these like lesser movies that haven't hit that well. Like it is much worse than those movies because it has a terrible script. The previous one, Fallout, had a terrible plot, but this one has a terrible script on every level. The dialogue is terrible. None of the bants, none of the character interplay work. It's just so bad, and the action isn't very good either. The action in Fallout is really good. The action in Dead Reckoning is sort of Marvel standard, which is like, yep, I guess you went and shot a bunch of stuff, but there's no magic. There's nothing that does anything special. So yeah, this movie, my anticipation for this movie was lower than it's ever been for a Mission Impossible movie, but that still doesn't mean that it was low per se. It's just I've been so fucking amped for every Mission Impossible movie up until now that this one, I just wasn't at that level, but I still was like, I'm going to go see it in the cinema, which I know for you go see everything in the cinema. For me, going to see something in the cinema is such a rare occurrence now. Kids dominating my life, that Mission Impossible still has that place. It still reserves that spot where I will go out of my way to see it. Now, so happens that, and this only happens once every few years, but the whole family have gone away on holiday without me, and I'm at home alone, Kevin McAllister style, and I can do an all-day cinema trip, which is a thing I used to do years ago. Haven't done it for years. Don't know if I still have the stamina for it, but I've just done movie one of today's all-day cinema bonanza, and that was in a relatively small screen, but with a very civilized audience, not a peep out of anyone. And that's saying something because it's 3 hours. I think it's 3 hours. I actually don't know how long it's been. It felt like a long one. Final Reckoning. And I assumed it was going to be absolute dog shit, like irredeemably bad. So let it be known that was the expectations that I was coming in with. Let it be known that was what it had to be better than for me to have a good time with it. And I did have a good time with it. I liked the movie. I enjoyed it. I'll just say that from the get-go before I start getting into like comparing it to this movie or that movie. But I did have a good time with it. I hate in movies when they go over the top emotional reverence when it's a action blockbuster thing. Like they did it in The Dark Knight Rises, they did it in No Time to Die, they did it in Avengers Endgame. It's like, this is not Schindler's List. Like, I don't need it to be such a weepy, reverential, this is so important and emotional, it's so sad, and it's like, that's generally something I hate. And this movie does that, and I didn't mind it. It kind of got me emotionally a few times. Maybe I'm getting old, but the opening scene where you get the Angela Bassett giving a mission on VHS to Ethan, and they show a montage of all the Mission Impossible movies. I'm like, shit, man, I've been watching Mission Impossible for fucking 30 years. 30 years of my life I've been watching all these scenes. Every single clip, they show a scene for like a quarter of a second, and you're like, yep, yeah, I remember that. I've seen that many times, and I've loved it. And it was like, wow, this is a real big deal. To the point where I thought that there was a very good chance that they'd kill off Ethan. Now, obviously, they're sort of deciding that it's too big of a cash cow, I feel like, for them to really end it. So instead they marketed it as the final one, but then not said it's the final one. They just kind of let people assume it's the final one by like sort of vague language. And then when they make another one, it's like, well, we never said that was the final one. So the last one was the first commercial disappointment of the franchise, and they're probably like, let's get one more out of it. If it does well, then let's keep making them. And they completely left it open. They've killed off Luther, and then previously killed off Ilsa. They could pull a Fast and the Furious and just retcon all that. That would give it less integrity than the franchise has had so far. But I'm sure that they would be happy to do that if they felt that that was like the right commercial decision. But yeah, I think most of what you could say negatively about this movie, most of what you could complain about, is done so much worse in the previous film that I'm just not really. I'm just having a browse for some snacks for the next movie. I'm going to go see Sinners in a few minutes. But yeah, most of the criticisms I could level at it are, as I said, things that are just so much worse in the previous film. Like, the plot is, of course, pretty dodgy. It feels like they put more effort into that side of things. They certainly, the character expository scenes where it's a bunch of people in the room explaining the stakes and explaining the plot, those are better written from a dialogue perspective and better acted. So I cared more about that stuff. The action is still subpar for the franchise. I think the franchise has had pretty good action in general over the years. So I kind of don't really, I don't know. I don't mind that it's not as good as climbing up the Burj Khalifa in Ghost Protocol. I don't need it to be that good. I'm happy that it is good. It's actually thin on the ground. There isn't much action in the movie, but the submarine sequence, that prolonged submarine investigation thing, which is good because it's got no combat, it's got no fast-paced action, it's all just like kind of like spatial exploration type stuff. I really enjoyed that. The plane fight at the end, where he's going from one plane to the next plane, I thought that was really good. I thought that was the first time in a while that I've seen one of these classic Tom Cruise really does X and actually given a shit. Like when he did that motorcycle jump off the cliff in the last movie, I was like, yeah, so what? Like, you're driving a cliff in a motor. I've seen that in every movie. Like, it's like, it was no biggie, the way, especially compared to the way that they marketed it. So yeah, this one kind of worked for me in those ways that they try and make these films work. I'm sorry, I'm just simultaneously talking to you, but I'm also browsing chili coated peanuts and various snack options. Yeah, so I thought I liked the I like what they do in every movie, where they build up the multi-layered stakes, where you got like, well, these people have to do this, and these people have to do this, but these people over here want this, and they're going to try and do that. But if that happens before this, then that will mean this, and like that Rube Goldberg device thing, I felt was sort of missing from the last movie, Dead Reckoning, and I think that was a symptom of just of being so cavalier with the writing, like the actual writing of the movie, that they basically didn't write anything. That kind of put them in a position where they ended up with no interesting dynamic action sequence. It was always just like baddie chase goodie, and we'll figure out some sort of plot, stakes, and implications to that later. But it's now just like, let's just film baddies chasing goodies. And in this one, it felt like there was more of a like, these people are over here, these people are over here kind of thing. Let me just stop this voice note and continue in a minute, because I'm just going to pay for these. All right, bought those snacks. Just going to town down now because I heard a rumor that they sell Moulins clothes, and my daughter is obsessed with the Moulins. Although this doesn't look like it's much clothes in here. There's a little bit of a browse. Yeah. So, what else can I say about the movie? I mean, there's some stuff in this movie that is god awfully bad that I've completely got out of my system by watching Dead Reckoning 2.5 times and talking about it and complaining about it at great length. So the fact that the entity, which I resent even saying, it's such a stupid concept, the fact that the entity is is not only one of the worst villains ever in an action movie, because it's completely undefined, that they haven't in any way worked out why it wants what it wants, or what its motivations are, or the true, like, real accurate nature of it. It's just complete flimsy bullshit. The fact that that is as bad as it is just something I've completely accepted and come to terms with before watching this movie. If I was watching this movie having never seen the first one, which wouldn't be difficult to do from a sort of plot perspective, because they give you loads of in fact, it's almost the better way of going about things, because the first movie has almost nothing happens in it, and then what tiny little plot details you do need to know from the first movie are given to you again in numerous flashbacks. In fact, this film assumes its audience to be such idiots that every time it mentions something, it gives you a flashback to that thing, even if that thing was just 20 minutes ago. So it's just like, I guess maybe when you're writing these movies in so complicated ways, like literally the actual writing of it, not the end screenplay, when you're with the writing of it and the conceiving of it is so chaotic and messy, maybe you're like a bit paranoid, sort of understandably paranoid, that people won't actually understand what's going on, and then you feel like, okay, well, let's now just really go ham on the flashbacks and the clarifying inserts and stuff like that. So yeah, the entity is terrible. It's such a bad idea. It's such a shame. The franchise hasn't had good villains in general, but Philip Seymour Hoffman in the third one is probably the best Bond villain, if you want to call it a Bond villain, of any movie ever. John Boyd in the first one, really strong. And Henry Cavill, I liked a lot. I mean, that's a bit of a different thing. I think he kind of is only the villain in like the final third of the movie, but it works well because he's like the younger, hotter Tom Cruise is all about like youthful, handsome. He is the vital, strong, young actor guy, and then putting him up against like the next generation of that is a good idea, and it works well. Just leaving the shop now. I'm going to get back to the cinema to see this next movie, although there'll be like a decade of ads and trailers, so I probably don't need to go in too quickly. But yeah, like I said, stuff like the fact that the entity just doesn't work and is never going to give you anything satisfying from a narrative or sort of dramatic tension perspective is just something I expect going into the Final Reckoning. In fact, if I watch the Final Reckoning in a few years, I probably won't like it at all, but it greatly exceeded my rock bottom expectations. I thought the the soppy, sentimental, we're a team and we look after each other and we care about each other, and you've got to make the emotional choices and you've got to make the right choice and blah blah. Like all of that stuff, I thought worked fairly well. I preferred it here than in the Fast and the Furious movies, for example. I thought Cruise did a really good job. I've been sort of doubting his movie star credentials a bit lately because I know everyone loved it, but I wasn't keen on Top Gun Maverick. I wasn't keen on Dead Reckoning. So it's been a little while since and I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan, and I think he's probably the best movie star of all time in terms of that lighting up the screen with charisma type thing. But it's been a while since I've really felt that, and I think he brought it here. To my surprise, actually, I've been kind of waiting for the last few years for him to transition into old man roles, because I thought like he couldn't do this quite what he does in this movie again, and he definitely proved me wrong in that regard. Back in Magical, when he's at this bar park now, walking across it. But yeah, this AI thing where they've created. I think they created this baddie because that means that they could shoot the whole movie without deciding on who the baddie is, because then they don't appear on screen. Then they got the surrogate character Gabriel, who is completely wishy-washy and ill-defined. Like the way they talk about him in some scenes in the first one, like he's like Hannibal Lecter level of psychopathic sadist, and then we never see that. He's just power hungry, and then he's like a laughing maniac, and it's all just complete chaos and completely all over the place. I like the twist that Nick Offerman isn't bad and isn't going to shoot the president. I thought that was nice. You do see throughout this movie, or at least I don't think you saw it because you didn't like the movie, I'm guessing, but I felt that Chris McQuarrie's talents as a screenwriter, I mean, he wrote one of the best screenplays of the 90s in Usual Suspects, and he made his name by being a really dependable screenwriter. So it's ironic that he's now become kind of the ultimate icon of bad screenwriting, or like bad what's the word? A bad approach to screenwriting. But you do see throughout this movie, I don't know if it's him or other writers coming in punching up, but you see like that kind of screenwriting magic that this franchise has always had come through. Mission Impossible, the reason it's always been a cut above the Bond movies is because the Bond movies were always really badly written, except for the lines, the kind of like Bondisms and stuff like that. But in terms of the plot, they were like atrociously bad. Whereas Mission Impossible would often, when they'd set up, okay, there's a MacGuffin that he needs to go get in this place, but exactly how we're going to describe that and set up the stakes and set up everything, that everything situational to that, means that you're more invested in that MacGuffin than you've ever been in anything you've ever seen in your life. And that skill kind of starts to come through here in various bits throughout the film. It's also it's over the top in a way, but yeah, I liked it. I liked he has to go down into that submarine where the guy from Severance is, and then he has to sort of he has to sell them on this idea. And there's so many scenes of Cruise having to sell people on ideas, and that's just like classic Tom Cruise, you've got to trust me type of stuff. So yeah, I liked the movie. I'm gonna pop into the cinema now because I'm gonna do my next movie, and it's very windy here, so I'm worried that you might not be getting much. You might not be hearing all this clearly, but it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it, because I'm guessing it didn't work for you at all.
Hey man, so sometimes me not sending a voice note isn't indicative of the movie being bad per se. It's indicative of how much I like the movie, that I'll be willing to have a further conversation and trying to recall it when you get to it, because obviously I've got a lot more freedom to watch movies and go to the cinema than you. So sometimes with some movies, if I give you a voice note and I know you're not going to see it for months, I feel very compelled to give my thoughts on it, knowing that you will come back to me with your thoughts when I may have no recollection of it, or a very fleeting recollection of it. So sometimes it's not that I necessarily didn't like the movie, it's that when you come back to me, I only liked it just enough to welcome the conversation, because I'm at such a disadvantage of a back foot of trying to remember, really. Now, this was only a week ago, so we can have this conversation, but yeah, just be aware it's not always a full indication of whether I like the movie or not. So because you went through your Mission Impossible, let's say, experience, I'll tell you mine. By the way, it's fantastic that you actually got to see the first Mission Impossible in the cinema. I can only imagine what that's like. I don't think I did, but I certainly seen it in a year of it being released on, which would have been videotape, I presume. So loved the first one. Really didn't like the second one. But again, like you said, I was expecting a Mission Impossible movie, and we got a John Woo movie, but I haven't seen it in a long time. So maybe it's a good movie in its own right. Can't say. And I think that was enough for me to completely be against sequels. And I mean, The Lost World was pretty good, but I don't know. It was something about the drop in quality of Mission Impossible 2 that made me not bother with the rest. And then years later, I went back to Mission Impossible 3, thought it was fantastic. Really liked Rogue Nation of no, Ghost Protocol, I think it's the one after that. Then really liked Rogue Nation. Really liked Fallout. That's my second favorite, like yours. Then we get to Dead Reckoning. Agreeing with all your problems with Dead Reckoning, I 100% agree with almost everything you will say and have said. I still think it's a good movie in its own right. I think it's better than Marvel. I think it's better than Night and Day and all these type of movies. But as a Mission Impossible movie, I think it stinks the building out. It's such a dip in quality. I do think Tom Cruise is really good in it as well, as I do in Maverick. And when I watched it a second time, after the massive disappointment of the cinema visit 2 years ago, I actually like Dead Reckoning a lot more, although it is a piece of shit compared to a Mission Impossible movie. It's very cheesy. The dialogue is bad. The entity is bad. The action sequences are more a rom-com-y type of vibe, maybe almost the Mummy-esque. And I say that as somebody who's a fan of the Mummy, but not the Tom Cruise Mummy, but the Brendan Fraser Mummy. But I do think it's a good movie as an action movie in its own right. I'm just watching it. It's new to Netflix. I probably think it's quite good. I think every problem in the Final Reckoning, every problem in the Dead Reckoning is also there in the Final Reckoning, and is much worse. I liked it more than Dead Reckoning for the reasons I'll expand on in a minute. But at the same time, everything that's wrong with Dead Reckoning is there and multiplied in the Final Reckoning. Still got the entity, still got massive dialogue problems. There's a scene where Holt McAney, what was his name? The guy from Mindhunter, David Fincher uses him a lot. When he says, that son of a bitch, he did it. He actually did it. That really sums up the depths of dialogue we're getting in this movie. And we also got that type of thing that Dead Reckoning was guilty of as well, where every character gets the line. It's like, I'm writing this, then someone else will say podcast because you've just seen, then someone else will say Final Reckoning. So why does everyone get a line like a bad stage play? It's just so bad. You don't need half those characters. And then there's some real crazy decisions. Like, what's his name? I'm always saying his name wrong. So Shia Wiggum, is that his name? His partner in the opening prison scene when they break out the girl from the first movie. That should be the end of that guy's journey. But yet he comes along and joins the team. There's this absolutely nothing character. And then there's such a hokey nature of putting things together. Show a few clips from the old Mission Impossible. So this will seem epic. You are emotionally invested in this franchise. Okay, but if I was emotionally invested by this point, you wouldn't have to show me these clips imagining how much I'm invested in this movie. It's a cheap movie trick that happens, I think, where they try and remind you of how good it was so you don't realize how far it's fallen. And then the way the script really tries to throw in some bad tie-ins. The reason why Shia Wiggum is after Tom Cruise is because he's Jim's son. Oh, it's really connected. The reason why the entity was born is because in Mission Impossible 3, remember the rabbit foot? That is linked. It's really clutching at straws to make a connective universe. If Marvel came up with the blueprint for this is more like the DC version of trying to recreate that universe, where they're desperately trying to make it feel bigger and more expanded than it is. But when, for the most part, Mission Impossible has always been pretty self-contained. Remember the guy that designed the thing in Langley? He's going to show up in Alaska or wherever it was. Remember the person who used to take out the trash? Well, he's now this, like, the way they're really trying to expand on the universe. Stop. Cats fighting as usual. They're really trying to expand on the universe in a way that isn't earned, isn't, at least to me, emotionally resonant. This movie is very much trying to manipulate the heartstrings like a bad advert. There's a scene at the end of the movie where all the team are saying goodbye to each other, and well, Haley Atwell's new. So, okay, see you, lady that I've met in 6 weeks. The guy that replaces Luther has literally been along for a few days. See you, guy that's now replacing Luther. Oh, Benji. Oh, I remember Benji. Benji's been around for a while, so it's not emotionally resonant in the slightest because Rebecca Ferguson's gone, Ving Rhames is gone, so it really doesn't mean anything. And this whole sacrifice for the team, when the team is completely new and they've completely shifted out the old team and then given the new team the status of the old members who have been there from the beginning. Someone you love will die again. They literally pull the same trick. Someone will die tonight that you love. Someone will die that you care about. And it's the exact same retread as Dead Reckoning, just worse. And then there's some really weird decisions as well with the action in the movie where Tom Cruise has like a fake toot in his mouth at one stage and he's trying to talk, and then he violently murders people off screen, and we have to see Haley Atwell's facial expression like some bad Looney Tunes or something. It's really weird that would appear in such a big budget movie. And having said all that, for me, the submarine sequence, which I had no idea was coming, I had some idea that a plane sequence is going to be involved, was probably one of the best action sequences I've ever seen. It was brilliant and it was an absolute delight. And seeing that in the cinema was what Tom Cruise promises us in a way when he says this is pure cinema, it needs to be seen on the big screen. It was just an absolute pleasure to watch. The moment that sequence begins, when he just jumps into the ocean to get to the submarine and holding nothing back like Ethan Hawke from Gattaca, type moment was just the complete ethos and very much on point for that Ethan character, that he would do that. And it was just a breathtaking sequence. Then when he swims into the sub and he finally gets rescued and he meets the guy from Severance and he's got to convince them to go this direction and get to the abandoned sub. And then he just goes out the back of the sub, and then we see the pure scale of the other submarine that he has, that's following them, that he has to try and navigate past. Like, that's the beginning of that action sequence, that whole moment. And the scene where he goes into that sub, this is where Tom Cruise making an effort to be practical and put himself out there really adds to the cinema of it. It's very much in the way of Inception, where Christopher Nolan decided to make the set of one of the scenes where the background rotates. You could tell this is Tom Cruise in a tank, and the shots they were able to get of him inside while they were rotating that set, and the picture of Tom Cruise's face while all this was happening, the up close and the camera angles, just, I really appreciate that he took the time to do these type of stunts. And the sequence itself is fantastic because it's like something you would see in outer space in a movie where there's a massive stunt, but it manages to capture the expanse of the sea while also the claustrophobia of being deep in the ocean in a submarine. So at the same point, we got two dual scenes going on. We got the scene on the outside of the sub, precariously continuing to roll over and go to the edge of a cliff. And meanwhile, we've got Tom Cruise trying to navigate this really small area that's filling with water and these I don't know if it's torpedo heads or pipes or whatever it is on top of his head. And he's trying to navigate down to get this source code for the entity. I think that's what it is. Yeah, that was just one of the purest cinema experiences I've seen since Mad Max. So if I'm thankful for anything about that movie, it is that sequence. And it took a long time for it to get to that sequence as well, because the first 45 minutes of this movie is recapping everything that happened in the last movie. And there's even one scene when they're sitting around and they're talking about what Ethan Hunt has done. He's done this, he's done that. And then they're talking about the scene in the last movie where he put all the people to sleep, and they're like, wait, didn't that happen to us recently? And it's just a very funny scene. I think Macquarie's quite lost it. But you are completely right in how good Tom Cruise is in this movie. Now, for me, he's as good as this in Maverick, and to an extent, as bad as Dead Reckoning Part 1 is, I think he's brilliant in that movie as well at what he has to do. The problem is, it's a terrible script, and it's so many terrible elements for a Mission Impossible movie. But in this, it plays to his strengths a lot more as well. So I think it's the same level of Tom Cruise we always get in these movies, which is fantastic for me. But this script plays to his strengths really up against it. You got to trust me one final time. And there's a very fail-safe element to this movie as well. We watched that movie by, I think it's Sidney Lumet recently, where there's these nukes at stake, and Angela Bassett is thinking about dropping a nuke on her own city should this happen, and her son being in that city. That's very reminiscent of Failsafe, what goes on in that room. So I really appreciated that being at stake as well, because having seen that movie recently and the movie Failsafe did some of the work that this movie doesn't do by its association. Now, not many people will have seen Failsafe around the time of this movie, so it's quite a unique thing, but it was eerily reminiscent of that. So knowing that that's the stakes, considering how that movie ends up, and Tom Cruise being up against it, was really good as well. And I really liked the scene where he's trying to convince them to help him, and he's constantly trying to sell people like a frantic Jerry Maguire in this movie, which is brilliant. And then, yeah, I agree with you. Unlike the much heralded motorbike stunt, which admittedly the second time round I liked it very much because I could contextualize it in terms of what type of movie I was watching. Oh, this is a funny scene. This is Jackie Chan instead of something serious. This is a Jackie Chan bike stunt. Is probably the best way to look at that rather than something serious. So I enjoyed it a lot more the second time. But this, just from pure action cinema, without the comedy element, works so well, because at the beginning of it, we got Tom Cruise running to catch the plane, and then he gets on the other plane. So it's brilliantly choreographed, because we get the scene of him taking over the other plane, and then we got the sequence of him and S.I. Morales, who is terrible in this. In the first movie, he had a bit of charisma when he was not saying much and very all wise, all knowing because of the entity. But the second he's unhinged and he's laughing about and he's crazy and he seems quite cartoonish, I thought that was very bad phone-in performance from him. But it's probably not his fault. But I really liked that stunt sequence, and it was brilliant seeing the G-force on Tom Cruise's face. And I think we saw something a little bit similar in a Bond movie before, but this is what happens when you get to see the actor's face up front and up close. It really adds to it. And I like the level of stakes of the plane chase, that a lot of the damage getting done to Cruise's ship is because of the wind and because of the plane zigzagging back and forth. I thought that was really good. Now, there is a bit of a problem later when we get a close-up shot of S.I. Morales, who clearly isn't up in the plane like Cruise is. And because we get the pure shots of Cruise being up in the plane, it draws attention to it when we have to believe S.I. Morales is hanging out the plane, and he clearly has to be CGI inserted or whatever kind of trick they did. It was quite jarring, and it just goes to show you, when you have Tom Cruise doing the stunt and you have to show another person up there, there's quite a distinction in having someone in the shot and having to insert someone up in the shot, because probably if Tom Cruise wasn't up there, I would have had less problem with the S.I. Morales shot. So yeah, I enjoyed myself. I had a good time. I had loads of complaints. I had the best action sequence I've seen in cinema in a long time in the submarine sequence. And I had a lot of stupid shit on top of that as well. Oh yeah, one of the things that Macquarie does as well, I think one of the movies, it was with, what's his name, Sean Locke, where they had Benji with a bomb on him at a dinner table in London. That was the beginning of this. And then in Fallout, we had an ultimate sequence with the bomb where Tom Cruise's ex-wife is, and that helicopter sequence. The way that he keeps on trying to insert bomb sequences to lesser degrees in this is ridiculous. I'm guessing Ving Rhames is actually sick because he's not doing much movement in this, but the fact that it's never explained what's happening in the character in this, and he suddenly is handcuffed to a bomb. It's just stop trying to compete yourself with the bomb sequences, because you've already reached the level. And then there's a bomb sequence later on where we have the guy who designed Langley and his wife, and there's another bomb sequence on top of that. Probably just enough with the bombs already. But I did quite like Haley Atwell's addition of the pickpocket skill, trying to catch the entity into that USB at the right time. I did enjoy that. So overall, I'm positive on the movie, as I am positive on the last movie. I've got the exact same complaints of both the movies. However, I feel like because of the action sequences, this is a better Mission Impossible movie than the previous one. And I think because we also get the best out of Cruise in this movie, it's a much better Mission Impossible movie as well. So yeah.
Yeah, the failure to explain why Luther is in a hospital bed, like, unless I must be forgetting something, because it, like, Hayley Atwell was apparently 8.5 months pregnant for some of her fight scenes. So if you can do that, then surely you can figure out some way to have Luther just be like in a chair or something. Like, I don't know. The thing is with these mission movies, because of the way they write them or don't write them, because of the way they don't write them, a hell of a lot of stuff probably gets left on the cutting room floor. In fact, I know it does. Endless stuff, because they haven't decided on the story or the plot or anything until, like, you know, a week before the film comes out in cinema. So there's probably stuff about Luther getting cancer or something that just that was like hurting the pacing that they took out. I don't know. And yes, I agree. The bombs, like endless fucking diffusing bomb. This is a franchise that has done great work with bomb defusal. Some phenomenal scenes across its series with bomb defusal. That now it's almost like we're punishment for enjoying those scenes, that we now have to, like, whenever he fucking pulls a tarp off a bomb, I'm like, oh fucking hell, a bomb. Jesus. All right, I guess I whenever I see that, I look at that like a piece of screenwriting formatting or something. Like Chris McQuarrie has like copy and pasted or hit return or something. Like I don't even look at that as like a real thing. I look at that as like okay, he wants to keep these characters here and he wants to pressurize this moment here, but it's not the thing that's really, it's not about the bomb, it's about, you know, it's a shortcut essentially. So yeah, the bomb stuff is awful. I like this film more than you, I think. One thing that I had that you didn't have is you get to go to the cinema all the time, and I rarely get to go to the cinema. So for me, going to the cinema and just like, obviously Mission Impossible, it's like one of the things that is most benefited by the cinema. So for me, just like getting this kind of a blockbuster experience is rare. I really don't know when was the last time I watched a blockbuster film at the cinema. It was a long time ago. So because I'm checked out of superhero stuff at this point. I don't really ever go to see Marvel movies or anything like that. I'm not into like the Disney live action remakes. I'm not into the Fast and the Furious. So like a lot of the stuff that is these big movies, I'm not really seeing them. Furiosa, I feel like, came out last summer, and I watched that, but I was very drunk at the time, barely conscious. But yeah, this is an experience that I don't get to have that often. I think that might elevate it a bit, and also just like incredibly low expectations. I think we both rewatched Dead Reckoning in the past couple of weeks. You had a surprisingly good time with it, and I had a bad time with it. So that could literally be the difference. And I think often when we talk about movies together and we feel 90% the same about the movie and then 10% different, I liked it 10% more than you, or vice versa, the conversation then devolves into like a sort of debate almost about like, we just focus like on the things that we disagree about and like go, oh well, I think that this scene, I don't think that was a plot hole, I think it was a plot hole. It's like we're focusing all of our conversational, our attention on the 10% where we divulge, whereas in actuality, like, we feel quite similar about the movie, and we would make the same comments about the film. So just let it be known, I agree with most of what you've said, and like not to the exact same pitch you might say that the submarine stuff is like the best action sequence you've seen in years. I don't know if I quite get there, but maybe I do. You know, at the end of the day, there's not much. Like I said, I'm not seeing many action movies, I'm not seeing many blockbusters. So it is really, really good stuff. I loved the submarine stuff. I really loved hearing you detail it there, because it isn't just when he's in that suit with the oxygen. It is a whole part of the movie from when he's in that plane, and it's like, listen, we can't just fucking hover here forever. These Russian jets are that was the one warning they're going to give us. If we stay here, they're going to just shoot us down. So Cruise is like, I just have to dive down and hope I get to the thing. Like, from that moment to when he's in the inflatable decompression chamber with Haley Atwell, again, one of the classic Tom Cruise is he like not allowed to kiss people, or is he not allowed to have romance in his movies, so he can only have these scenes that are like a romantic scene but not like what is there's something weird going on there about like the way romance works in his movies, where it's like, is this a friendship or is there a romance or what's going on? But anyway, that whole that whole stretch of time, which has dialogue stuff, action stuff, tense, almost like horror stuff underwater, is phenomenal. It's brilliant. It's great the whole way through. It obviously keeps cutting back and forth to this island where they have to try and get the coordinates and you know, Morse code the coordinates and everything, which is good as well. That's a brilliant stretch of the movie, and in true Chris McQuarrie fashion, that's like 40 minutes or something. Like, that's an incredibly long section of the movie. And then for me, the end plane stuff, which is a bit silly, that he's like, I brought a plane and a spare just in case. It's like, that, what the fuck, man? Just fucking put a bit more effort into the script. Like, it just, I don't know. Anyway, the stuff in the planes is great. But yeah, I liked the movie. I think it's like, we always talk about it. I think it's like one of our most commonly discussed subjects of like, are you on board or are you not on board? And I think a lot of the stuff that you thought was really bad, and that I could probably in the cold light of day agree is pretty bad, it just wasn't bothering me through the movie. Like the dialogue, like you're mentioning, that kind of clunky screenwriting of like everyone saying a line and stuff. Is like, yeah, completely agree. Wasn't bothering me really while I was watching the movie. I thought the dialogue in Dead Reckoning was terrible. I thought this one was, maybe it was just the acting or something. It felt like it was a bit punchier. I bought things a bit more. And I think, like, if I'm looking back at Dead Reckoning, I thought the action was nothing special, which is one of the huge redeeming features of any Mission Impossible movie. As I said, Fallout is my second favorite. It's your second favorite. Adored it in the cinema. It's redeemed by these incredible action sequences. But the bathroom fight, the London car chase, the end helicopter scene, like it fucking kills it when it comes to the action sequences. And Dead Reckoning for me, just, as you said, it's like rom-com actions, Mr. and Mrs. Smith or Night and Day. It's like, it's fine. It's not, it's like, you watch any Marvel movie and you'll have action scenes as good as that Dead Reckoning. And that's not what we've come to expect from the Mission Impossible franchise. So for me, that was one problem I had with Dead Reckoning that I felt was Final Reckoning was a step up. The Entity is a terrible baddie, a terrible baddie. And in Dead Reckoning, they go really big and camp with the Entity, with all the fucking, like, that party they go to in Venice with like the CGI like, why does the Entity have like a fucking Windows Media Player visualizer like projected all over the place and speak with this Ethan? It's the like, this movie, of course it has to, it's a sequel to the last movie, and it's not even a sequel, it's part 2 of the last movie, so they kind of have to bring that character in quotes back. But they background the entity massively. Like the entity doesn't even get a death scene. Like there's no scene where while they're trying to diffuse the final bit or whatever, the entity is saying that you will never succeed. And like they don't do that because they've realized, I mean, I don't know why, but I wonder if it's because they realize that the entity is the most hated fucking element in Mission Impossible history. So they more or less scrape out the entity from the film. They talk about it, so it's very much there thematically. All of the like, of course, that stuff about the entity has now become like a religion is terrible. It's just so bad. But you've kind of made your bed, and now you have to sleep in it. With the first movie, like they set themselves up with a hard challenge to like, unless they just go like, it wasn't really an entity, it was this guy. But like, if they want to in any way like follow up on what they've said in the first movie, they have to do some bullshit. But I think the fact that they backgrounded it was good for me. I liked the character stuff more in this film. It's still, you know, one of the worst films in the franchise, but I felt like that little trio of Luther, Benji, and Ethan was working well. I agree that the rest of the team are like not really bringing anything to the table, but in the last movie, I wasn't even enjoying Benji and Luther stuff. Maybe it's because Luther dies, and I don't know. It just felt like a bit of a step up for me. But there is a lot of bad shit that comes over. And one element is this Ethan's origin story. So the first movie starts, I don't know if it starts with it, but early in the first movie, we get this like fleeting flashback to like a tunnel. It's black and white. It's the catalytic moment that created Ethan Hunt as we know him. It's Gabriel is the sort of he everything we've watched for 20 years or whatever, 30 years, that is Gabriel's doing essentially, because he created Ethan Hunt. And the whole pledge, you're given the choice. You reach this moment in life where it's a crossroads, and you can go to prison for the rest of your life, or you could take the vow. Like, it all's coming back to this, and now Ethan's going to have to reckon with his whole fucking life, and this is the central trauma / identity forming moment of his life. And you assume, okay, by the later in the movie we'll get the full context. It's a bit frustrating that they just gave it as a flashback thing, but later in the movie we'll actually know, oh, Gabriel was his, you know, his mentor or his brother, or, you know, this or that or whatever. They don't give us that in Dead Reckoning in the end, which is one of my most hated aspects of contemporary blockbuster cinema. Is the old, you think you're buying a ticket to see a movie, but you're actually buying a ticket to see an intro or half a movie or something. And you get to the end of the movie and go, oh, they didn't resolve that. Okay. They didn't give us anything to do with that. All right. That thing that I don't remotely care about, you didn't even fucking tell me the answer to it, so now I have to fucking like wonder about that thing for 2 years. Then you get to this movie and they've just abandoned that. They don't even fucking, they only include it in this movie to a lesser extent. Then they include it in the last movie. So they're like, we couldn't think of an interesting thing for there to be Gabriel being like siring Ethan into fucking the Impossible Missions Force, whatever it's called. So just forget about that. It's not important. Whatever. He's important to Ethan Hunt. They've got a rivalry, they're nemesis, whatever. Like, just whatever. Don't worry about it. Like, and again, cutting room floor. Like Angela Bassett, as you said, Failsafe immediately comes to mind for the like 25 people watching this movie who've seen Failsafe, which is a phenomenal movie. The having to sacrifice one of your own cities if you're going to nuke foreign cities to prevent a war has to come from Failsafe. I mean, I guess you could come up with that idea independently, but it's such a good idea and it's so much dramatic weight, and it's done much better in Failsafe. It's a completely different type of movie. But part of the appeal of that, or part of the sell of that, is that Angela Bassett presumably has her son living in that city. Now, I went to the toilet a couple of times in the movie, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't see any evidence in the movie that her son lived in that city or was stationed in that city. Now, I'm fully open to you saying that there is a scene where that's clarified and you were in the toilet, because I went to the toilet a couple of times in the movie. But if that's not in the movie, then that would be more cutting room floor stuff. We see her son, we see the camera's like focusing on photos of her with her son, but then we don't get, I didn't get, again, I could be in the toilet, but I didn't get like the closure on that. And I know for Dead Reckoning that there was a hell of a lot of stuff that was kind of like intended for that movie, and it was either completely cut from the whole project or it was shifted to the next movie, and then who knows whether it even made it into the next movie. So yeah, it's chaotic, and as you said, it's brimming, it's fucking bursting with ideas that you were very critical of, the callbacks to characters stuff, that Shea Wiggum's turning out to be Jim Phelps' son. In the Fallout, Mission Impossible Fallout, they had, what's the name of that girl? Blonde, really bad character, but they brought her back in like 2 or 3 movies. The White Widow, I forget the name of the actress. They have it comes out in a throwaway line of dialogue. It's almost like an Easter egg. It's like, you can't you have to be like really like locked in to pick this up. But she is Vanessa Redgrave's daughter, who Max, the character from the first Mission Impossible movie, and that was like a cute Easter egg, as opposed to it's all fucking cyclical. It's the Skywalker saga. But now they've gone too far with that Shea Wiggum's thing, which adds nothing to the movie. Well, it does add something to the movie. It makes the movie worse because it adds baggage to a character that we don't care about, that is not even a character. Shea Wiggum's in the 2 movies. I like him as an actor, but he is nothing. He is nothing. Like, you could go in and Photoshop him out of the fucking movies, and and you've lost nothing. To try and convert that character into a storied part of a legacy is such a fail. It's like whatever you're trying to achieve in terms of weight, dramatic weight and impact and like from doing that, you have so fundamentally failed at that ambition, that it's really, if you want to say Final Reckoning is a shit movie, that's going to be one of the fucking Exhibit A right there. Like, it's going to be one of the worst, one of the, like, it's almost like condescending levels of screenwriting of like, oh, we'll make him be Jim Phelps. That'll be another way that this movie will be better. It's like, no, Jesus Christ, man, what are you thinking? And he's actually more charismatic and more of a character than his partner, who is now one of the team. So I agree, like, that guy is nothing. Now he's never really given. I certainly no crime of the actor. I didn't even know this actor. The black guy, I don't know if he's like from other movies or like maybe he's incredibly talented, but the character across 2 movies is given absolutely nothing. And in the first movie, they established this team. Tom Cruise was a big star. They gave him a big starring role, and they did this interesting thing where, like, they took a TV show that was always about the team with Jim Phelps as the hero, funnily enough, and then they went, we want to make this a star vehicle with a specific hero. I don't know if that's because they got Cruise involved or what, but we still want it to be about the team. And there's, the opening scene, they got this like all-star cast, Emilio Estevez and everything, and then his whole team dies. So it's kind of like, okay, we're killing the team concept, and we're making it so that it's actually just the one member of the team now. It's like a hero movie with a specific lead actor, but we're still going to do what the franchise has always done in its TV form, which is make it a team-based thing. And they've experimented with different cast members. Obviously, Luther is the one that's have a continuity through the whole franchise, but they've always done quite well with the team stuff. And then when Cruise was going to retire from the franchise like 10, 15 years ago, they brought in Jeremy Renner to take it over. And then Cruise decided to not do that. But Jeremy Renner, even though he was kind of like hoodwinked into being in the franchise, he did add massively to the entertainment value. He was brilliant. Simon Pegg was brilliant. Ving Rhames brilliant. Ilsa Faust, I forget her name, from Dune. My brain's not functioning now. Whatever she's called, she's fine. Hayley Atwell's pretty good. Pom, French girl, and this new guy, they aren't good. Like, they're fine as actors in the movie, as like people that are briefly in the movie, but they're not on that sort of Jeremy Renner level of, or like Jean Reno, or whatever, like where it's like I'm glad that they're in the team so that I get to watch them time and time again. So yes, I agree. The team has kind of got a little bit, it's degraded a bit, but hopefully they figure that out in future installments, either bringing in new people or just like fleshing out those characters and making them a bit more compelling. But yes, the making Shea Wiggum Jim Phelps' son is terrible, but the bring back the Langley guy from that scene, who I instantly recognized as soon as he walked into the room. So I was like, that scene, I've obviously seen it many times, and just the magic, the surprise, because I hadn't seen the trailers or anything, the surprise for me of like, oh my God, it's that guy and he's back. Like, I really like that. And you know, you've been in your voice note very critical of all of this film's emphasizing of the legacy of the Mission Impossible franchise. And I could be just like, I'm looking at it glass half full. I had a good time with it. I'm not being cynical about it, but I had a really good time with that stuff. I was really pleased to see that guy show up. I think the actor delivered. I think the screenwriting delivered, of like, where is this guy now? What's he been up to for the intervening years? What's his, like, what, like, how does that, like, he was a nothing character in that first movie. I don't think he even had a single line of dialogue, but what happens then? Like, and how can we use that in our new movie? Like, I thought that was really, really good. And he obviously looks older and stuff. So it's kind of just, that worked for me. The opening, I don't know if it's opening, but early montage of all the other Mission Impossible movies, that really worked for me. Now, if this isn't the final Mission Impossible movie, then that will be a blemish on this movie, because you can't do all of the, this is the end of the franchise pomp and circumstance, and then backtrack on it. And I think they will backtrack on it, and I think this won't be the final Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie. But if it is, that worked really well for me. All of the like, you've loved this franchise and it's so special, overly sentimental stuff worked well for me. Surprisingly, because I'm generally very cynical about that kind of stuff. But yeah, the clunky screenwriting, the bombs recurring, the someone you love will die, you're gonna have to make a choice, all that stuff. It's like, one of the starring characters in this movie is Chris McQuarrie and his screenwriting style, which is as recognizable as like Benji as a fucking member of the movie. And it's, yeah, I would love to, as I was watching the movie, I was like, I'm having a fairly good time, but I would love if this movie went into other people's hands. No, not this movie, this franchise. I'd love if the next movie had a different director and a different writer, because it's such a good franchise, and Tom Cruise brings so much to these movies. Like, some up and coming fresh new voice in like action blockbuster filmmaking, and some like sharp writer. That's what the franchise always did, you know. Like, obviously it wasn't up and coming. Brian De Palma was like, you know, all later in his career, but it was people who were like, Let's see what De Palma will do with this. Let's see what John Woo will do with this. Let's see what Brad Bird will do. J.J. Abrams, like they always were like, let's give it to someone else. Let's do interesting things, and then whatever connection Cruise and Macquarie have, where they're I actually feel like they're almost like a symbiotic filmmaking entity at this point, because like even things that aren't directed by Macquarie, like Top Gun, like they're still Macquarie projects. So it's almost like where I think, was it Paula, what was his producing partner for years? Forget her name. He's like the new version of that. So him and Tom Cruise are like a filmmaking entity, and much to the detriment of Tom Cruise overall. There's been some great movies, like Fallout is obviously a really good one. But yeah, this one did enough for me. I had enough good things going on. I agree, the fake tooth scene was ridiculous. I mean, am I right in saying that fake tooth was a fake? It was a fake cyanide. It was double bluff in a sense, because, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he really took real cyanide and he only survived because of the defibrillator that they use in him. But my interpretation of the scene was it was a fake thing that creates fake foam in his mouth and makes them think he's having a seizure or whatever. But it's a trick, and he's really just wants them to come in close to him so he can kill them. Like, Tom Cruise is fucking carrying around a fake thing in his mouth all the, like, for like what, decades or something, like to create that exact physical orientation between him and the henchmen is hokey, man. There's some hokey shit in this movie. But what isn't hokey is Tom Cruise doing things for real. And like, I've been watching this guy for, my whole life, genuinely my whole life. And many, many years, I wasn't conscious of the filmmaking and what he was doing behind the scenes. But like over the years, obviously become more informed of the level of commitment to actually doing things for real that he has. I found out something interesting recently. I think he did an interview in the press for this movie where he mentioned that he does his own insert shots, meaning if there's a scene of like him opening an envelope or something, that's really Tom Cruise's hands we're seeing. If there's like a scene of someone else talking and you can just blurry see the back of Tom Cruise's head, that is Tom Cruise's head that we're seeing. And that to me is so much more indicative of like his commitment to filmmaking than the motorcycle jumping off the cliff in Dead Reckoning, because I've only ever cared about him doing the stunts for real, not because I'm like, can you believe how the hard things that he's able to do, like that thing is really hard to do and he's able to do it. That's never impressed me. Like it has impressed me a bit, like, but you got Jackie Chan, and then you've got people who are like athletes and stuff like that. Like anything, any fucking helicopter flying Tom Cruise can do, professional helicopter pilots can do that better. So I've never been like one of like in awe of the fact that he can do this thing. The value of it has always been, it makes the movie much better when they're able to shoot the real actor doing these things. And that follows through to like the insert shots. So that like this motherfucker is 100% committed to the project and making sure that everything you see on screen pertaining to him is he's giving the filmmakers the most opportunity, that like every opportunity they want to position the camera wherever they want, shoot it however they want, because they won't have to fake it and patch it together. And I remember watching Fallout, and there's a scene where he does a jump out of an airplane into Paris, and he really did it, but it looks sort of CGI and composited, and it is kind of CGI, like just like the motorcycle jump in Dead Reckoning. That's mostly CGI. It's just he's real, but all of the cliff and everything is CGI, which is fine. That's not like a nitpick or anything. It's just sometimes the things that work the best for me are like in Fallout, him jumping out the airplane was fine, but I feel like you could have done that shot more or less without him doing what he really did. But there's another scene in Fallout where he's riding a motorbike, like whipping between traffic in London, and it wasn't talked about in the press, and it wasn't like this huge big can sell the whole movie off the back that he jumped out of an airplane type thing. It was just a little part of a chase scene, and the value I got of like feeling that there was real stakes and a real hero riding away from baddies, because I could tell while watching the shot, there's no way you can't get that shot without Tom Cruise really doing that pretty fast, dangerous motorcycle riding without a helmet on, was tenfold. So just like similarly in Dead Reckoning, when he does that motorcycle jump, they've sold the whole movie on like, this was really, really hard to do in real life, so you should go watch this movie because he did something that was really hard to do. And I'm like, no, I want to go see the movie because it's a good movie and it's entertaining. That is my whole impetus for going to see the movie. I don't care how fucking hard it was for you to do that shot. Now, if the shot was the best fucking thing ever, then I'm like, fair play to you. You really went, but actually it's just he wanted to do that stunt, and it cheapens the movie for me. The whole conceit of Benji having to get up to the top of a mountain in order to get onto a train is just so contrived and so nonsensical that for me at least, I can't help but think about the fact that this is in the movie because he thought it would be a cool thing to do that like no one's ever done before. But him weaving through traffic on the motorbike, that's not like Tom Cruise scouring the world for the most crazy shit that someone's ever. It's not Evel Knievel. It's like the movie needs this shot. It needs me to be able to do this thing, and I'm going to do it. And this film had more, like, obviously if Tom Cruise is up in an airplane hanging off the side of an airplane, I understand that he they came up with that idea because it would be thrilling and wild, but at least it kind of makes more narrative sense. I'm not breaking away from the story to watch Tom Cruise do a really, really specific stunt, but still the value, as you said, of watching him hanging off a plane with the fucking wind just tearing into him, and when Gabriel's like kind of nosediving and he's like zero G'ing around inside the bits of the plane, that whole plane sequence was amazing to me. And it was actually, even though he's like in his 60s or whatever, like that was probably one of the wildest things he's done. I remember when Rogue Nation came out and the opening scene of that has him holding onto the side of a plane, and they were talking about that so much in the publicity, and it was it was like one of the most pressed, like one of the most pushed stunts he'd ever done. And it's okay, it's not in the top 10 best moments in a Mission Impossible movie, but it was like one of probably the second most publicized after the Dead Reckoning cliff jump. But what he does in this movie, hanging off the plane, is like 1,000 times more entertaining than just being strapped to the side of a plane. It's like, okay, yes, I can see that you're filming for real and he really is on the side of a plane, but there's no fight sequence, there's no drama, there's no choreography, there's no storytelling. It's just, yes, he's technically holding onto the side of the plane. This one where he's having to fucking navigate and hang on the bottom and go from this plane to that plane and all this, is old school, great fucking action storytelling. It's literally storytelling within a sequence. So this was one where I got back a little bit more of that magic of like Tom Cruise is doing it for real. And I don't know how many more are we going to get of him. Like, I feel like now when you watch Jackie Chan, and this is completely understandable because he's fucking ancient, like you're not going to get that hit anymore. We got decades of that hit. He's incredibly prolific, but you can't expect now to watch a Jackie Chan movie and get him fucking sliding down a skyscraper or something like that. You're naturally not going to get that forever. So with Tom Cruise, watching the airplane sequence which I thought was like quite camp and funny, the way they had one bright red and one bright yellow. It's like, make sure people can tell the difference between the two planes. But yeah, that was great to see that so late into his career. Maybe he'll do it for another 10 years, but I don't know. Eventually he won't be able to do the things that he does in that. And as you said, with the wind and the G-force and everything like that, that sequence is fucking dog shit if it's all CGI, it's all blue screen, it's all like, they think that they can fake these things with like wind machines and stuff like that, but God, man, when you see it for real, it's just an absolute fucking cut above. So yeah, I had a good time with this movie, and I think I want there to be more. If I watch this film again in a couple of years, I'll probably think it's shit. Like, I was sort of whipped up in the movie. I had rock bottom expectations. It definitely doesn't compare to the good Mission Impossible movies like MI3, Ghost Protocol, obviously the first one, Fallout. But it resuscitated a lot of my love for the movie, of this franchise. It's absolutely laden full of bullshit, but Fallout was laden full of bullshit as well, and it's not on the Fallout level, but like it gave me a lot of good cinema entertainment. So yeah, I was happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I can't believe you said that Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise are a single entity without making that jump today are in fact the entity, which, if you consider the script writing of this movie, which literally has lines like, "It is written." I feel like they're trying to say it is written so much that it wasn't written at all, and it became an on-set joke when they didn't have a logical explanation for something. Someone would say, "Oh, well, it was written," and then that was enough just to cover every plot hole in this movie. And my other favorite little tidbit from this movie is when someone says, like, it's all right when they have the tape and it's Ethan Hunt, this is your mission, should you choose to accept it. It works so well in the old tape format, but whenever they're talking in the boardroom and then Angela Bassett or someone like that is saying, well, he's going to do this, he's going to do all this, and then someone else would come in with, well, should he choose to accept it? It happens about twice where someone kept on. It's like someone from the legal team would come in with, well, just be, as you know, we put this in the videotapes we literally send to all our agents. Should they choose to accept it? Consent is very important if you're in the MIF or whatever they're called. I couldn't disagree more when it comes to the stunts in, is it Rogue Nation? When he runs across the airfield and he gets onto the side of the airplane and then the shot continues on in Mission Impossible 5, I think it is. I came to that blind and it just works so well to me that I thought we were going to get a cut, and then the scene just continues from that perspective into the air. That is pure magic. It really added to it, and it really added to the continuous take of the tension and the shock. So I think it really added to it. I think if anything, the problem is how they choose to market certain aspects of Mission Impossible. So I totally missed the marketing of the first plane one, and I was all too keenly aware of the bike stunt because, well, people kept on sending me the promotion of it and thinking that was okay with spoilers. I think even you did that, and my other friend did it, and it's it's almost like, oh yeah, but it's okay because it's all about the stunts. And so the way Dead Reckoning Part 1 was promoted, it was all about the stunt, and maybe that's how you come across the plane one in the previous movie. What Was it Fallout? Whichever one, anyway. And if it's promoted in that way, it's like the Sixth Sense being brought to you. Like, wait till you find out that Bruce Willis is dead. And you're thinking, okay, now I'm waiting for that moment. Whereas if you just come across it randomly, it's fantastic. And even the one with the motorbike, when I was just watching it in the context of the movie, the second time round, it works really well. First of all, the entity changes this plan and they miss the initial jumping on the train. And Benji, like he always does with his directing, has the map thing. You got to keep on going. You got to keep on going straight. And he keeps on going straight and then comes across this mountain. You're not meant to know this stunt exists. So when you come across the mountain, then how is he going to do it? Oh, he's got to jump across it and fly in the air to meet the train. That's brilliant. And that's totally works with the context of the movie if you don't see it. Now, I know that they built the movie around the stunt, but if you're coming to it later and not aware of that promotional scene, you're not going to know about that stunt in the scene, and it will work so much better. So I think, if anything, a stunt works in Mission Impossible better if you don't see it promoted, which sounds obvious to say, but I think Cruise is always about getting the right shot for the right movie and for the right moment. And like you were saying, when he does his own insert shots, he's constantly doing these things, both big and small, because it would just make a better shot. And there's plenty of things in the Fallout, like you said, that are really impressive, besides the helicopter scenes and all that, where he's driving around on the motorbike. But there's another scene as well where he's running after Henry Cavill, and I think he goes on top of some landmark and he keeps on running, and I think he has to jump across something, and it's not a massive stunt by Cruise's standards, but it's just him trying to chase someone, and the reward for that scene is Henry Cavill just getting away in a helicopter. Just very simple action blocking that's made so much better by the actor physically doing it. And funny enough, you mentioned Jackie Chan. I watched a movie, I think it was starring Pierce Brosnan actually, in the IRA, where Jackie Chan goes to Northern Ireland for whatever reason. And it's not him doing the stunts, but because people expect that from Jackie Chan, he gets body doubled out of it at times. And it's just, I hope we never get that with Tom Cruise. Funnily enough, they have a best stunt category happening in the Oscars this year now. Or maybe next year, should I say. And we're probably not going to get any more Mission Impossible stunts. And regarding the Jim Phelps and the new team and whatnot, I have a feeling, and I might be completely wrong, but I have a feeling Shea Wiggum becoming the new Jim and some of this team being left over is thinking ahead for the next Mission Impossible they're going to try without Cruise. And I think it's going to bomb. And I think they're going to bring him back again. That's my prediction for the next one. So I think the bringing back of some of these characters and some of these continuations is a little bit more franchise cynical. And that's why I was a little bit more worried about some of the franchisification, for once of a made up word, of this movie than you were. I didn't mind the Langley guy, but I think the problem was there were so many other ham-fisted callbacks that it's just another thing on top of it. And even if the Alaska stuff was fine, I keep saying Alaska, it's probably not Alaska, but even if the initial scenes with the Langley guy is good or better than some of them, I think the problem is that he continues on to the final scene where they are defusing another bomb, and that character shouldn't be along for that ride. And there's constant situations where it's just over egging of the screenwriting that happens again and again, and that's the perfect example. He should have stayed, and if not burnt in that house, he should have just left at that moment. People outstayed their welcome quite a lot, and I do agree with you that the Benji segments and the Luta segments are better in this. However, Luta's only around for 5 minutes, and apparently this is rumor, but apparently one of the reasons why he's sick in this is to ease the feeling you'll have about him actually dying. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it's a studio note, but let's hope not. And you mentioned about Cruz's romances. I think there was enough on screen where Elsa to hint that they did have a romance. And I read in between your voice note that there was actually a scene where they kiss in Fallout, but it got cut. So at least there's the cutting room floor feeling of their romance left over. But what's weird is, and what can't happen then is, when the Haley Atwell character comes, you can't really have him having a romance straight away, or at all, since it was only a will they or won't they in the end with the Rebecca Ferguson character. So there's all that as well. But for the record, I had a very good time with this movie. There's just a massive dip in quality in the last two movies. Things that you just wouldn't see that are really bad that I just haven't had in the franchise up until the last two movies that are really noticeable. It's like I'm rewatching Friday Night Lights at the moment, and first season's fantastic, and I'm in the second season where there was that writing issues and the writer's strike, and there's just some outlandish things that would never be part of Friday Night Lights that thankfully when you get to the third season are rectified, but there's just things that just wouldn't be associated and seem like easy things to get right in Mission Impossible that have crept in the last two movies. The dialogue's never been this bad. Some of the inclusion of callbacks have never been this bad. We've never had a bad guy like the Entity. Like you said, they really try and distance themselves from the Entity. But the problem is they don't even have a good bad guy to distance himself from the Entity either, because he's so bad. But I still had a good time with the movie. There's just a hell of a lot more things to be critical about.
You might hear now I've got the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack on in the background. Just listen to that this evening. Just turning the movies over in my head and hearing that like both of us have this maybe slight blind spot, if you can call it a blind spot if we've seen the movie multiple times, but slight blind spot with Mission Impossible 2 of like having not seen it in decades and being a bit unsure about how it holds up. Kind of feel compelled to fill in that blank because the first movie I've seen recently, and then 3, 4, 5, etc. I've seen in the last 5 years, but MI2 I haven't seen for a long time. So yeah, feel like I need to go back and tackle that again. Yeah, I think we feel quite similar about this film. Final Reckoning maybe came to it with different expectations, or like we do obviously feel differently about it, but I think if you've had a good time with it, I've had a good time with it. It's one of the worst films in the franchise for me. It is the sequel or part 2 to the worst film in the franchise, a film that just doesn't deserve to be in the franchise for me, which I think you like a little more than me. So it's kind of like if you split the difference on our feelings about Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning, and we both sort of just average it out across the two movies, we probably feel almost exactly the same way about this thing, where like these two movies, if you treat them as one film, are the low point of the franchise. It's a great franchise that's generally delivered really, really good movies. So if you just sort of put these up against Fast and the Furious movies or Marvel movies, they're just kind of your average blockbusters that are coming out. Jungle Cruise, all of this shit that's coming out, like that's like the big tentpole movies of the year. These are still better than average, and as we've discussed with the submarine sequence and stuff, they have got top tier sequences in, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of bullshit in them. On the stunts thing, like, so the reason why I was comparing the Rogue Nation plane sequence with the Final Reckoning plane sequence is, you said that you saw Rogue Nation without knowing about that stunt, and it was exciting when it was like the shot was continuing and he was still holding onto the plane. Fair enough. I massively knew about that stunt beforehand, and I thought it was cool. I liked it fine. I wouldn't put it in the like high ranking of Mission Impossible moments, but I thought it was like a fun way to start that movie. But just doing a comparison here between them, that is just him sort of held on to a plane. Like that could be GoPro footage of like me doing some extreme sport or something. It's not like there's a fight sequence or like some actual narrative that plays out there. It's just he's holding on to it. Whereas this one, I mean, it is phenomenal like is a whole like 10-minute sequence of him moving around, grabbing onto this, climbing over here, fighting this guy here, stakes changing constantly. So I think that to me is, and granted, I appreciate that you had a really, really good time with that sequence in Rogue Nation, but as someone who did come to that Rogue Nation sequence with months of people raving about that from the first trailer all the way to like when I sat down in the cinema, comparing that to this, like I think there is a difference between can you believe he did this thing to this is a sequence that even if it had been just all CGI and blue screen, it would have been a well-constructed action sequence that now he's making better because he's doing it. It's not good because he really did it. It's better because he really did it, but it's an actual compelling action scene in its conception. And with the Dead Reckoning one, you're talking about how like, you know, it's fun. I think you said in your voice message there that it's like, you know, they get up to the top of the mountain and then Cruise has to do the jump. For me, the artifice is that there's no reason for him to be on the top of the mountain in the first place. It doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense if you want him to have to ride off the top of a cliff. And I'm not going to perfectly articulate the exact science of when a Cruise gimmick stunt works and when it doesn't, but there is something to, like, if you take a normal movie like Avengers or any of these movies where the actors don't do anything, they're basically like sat down in a fucking like nail salon the whole time with like a CGI background trying to make them look cool. If you take that type of filmmaking, but in other words, the action scenes are just purely written to be like logical and cool, and then you layer in Tom Cruise actually doing all that stuff for real, like when he has to jump over a wall or something, he does it for real. When he has to do like a handbrake turn, he does it for real. That's dynamite. That's adding so much value to the movie. But when you go into that territory of Tom Cruise sat down at his computer, like researching like biggest ravines in the world, or like trying to, the Evel Knievel energy of like trying to come up with, no one's ever done this before in a movie, no one's ever done this before in real life, imagine this, and now how can we build an action sequence around that? sometimes for me, that kind of like it ruins the balance between storytelling and spectacle a bit. And if it's a small moment, you know, and you don't know about it and you haven't seen the publicity, then I guess it doesn't suck up too much of the oxygen from the movie. But if you know about it, and if you're kind of like, I mean, like for this one, I went out of my way to not watch a single trailer. I didn't see one trailer. I tried to avoid anything because I was like, I was sick of like 2 years of seeing that fucking cliff jumping sequence and then watching that whole movie going, when's he going to jump off the cliff? This one, I tried my absolute fucking hardest to avoid that stuff, but I still managed to see an image of him hanging off a plane, and it was minimal what I saw. I didn't see like a fucking 14-minute behind the scenes thing of how they did it. Maybe I'll watch that now actually, because I'm kind of curious after the fact. But still, as I'm watching the movie, there's a little bit of an immersion break of like, when's he going to get to the yellow plane kind of thing. I think these movies are best seen in the cinema, but I think in another way they will be kind of best seen in like 15 years when people can just find them without any kind of like hyping of the stunts. And that like the moments where he's really there. I mentioned the motorcycle scenes, and obviously every scene he's there with dialogue, whatever, it could be anything, but like even the running stuff. You mentioned the chase sequence, like the foot chase with Henry Cavill, which ends at the Tate Modern in London. Like, it's a cliche that Cruise runs in every movie, and it's definitely not always managed well. Like in Dead Reckoning, which is again the worst Mission Impossible movie and full of absolute complete bullshit. There's a sequence where he's running along the roof of an airport where he has no script reason to be running. I presume when they filmed that shot, they didn't even have a justification yet for him to be running. They just wanted a shot of Cruise running. But then, like in this movie where he's running out the tunnels when Luther is going to die, which I have problems with that sequence as well, because the conversation they have when the bomb is ticking down is just outlandishly slow and whatever, fuck that. But at least him running out of it, it makes sense that he's running. And it is an immersion break again because he runs in every movie. It's like you see a non-diehard movie where Bruce Willis says yippee-ki-yay or something. It's like, okay, you're doing one of your trademark things, and I generally don't like that. But if you manage to justify the running, the fact that the actor himself is running for a long tracking sequence just adds value to the film. And sometimes I watch old movies now and I see like the actors really driving. They're not being towed. They really are driving. Or they really are dealing with fire or something like that. Like small fry stuff that just normal humans do, that insurance policies generally prevent actors from basically doing any level of physicality at this point in movies. I see that, I'm like, oh, they're really doing that thing. It's just levels up the film. So I think across his career, you go back to Color of Money where he learned how to play pool. Like, he has absolutely leveled up so many of his films by really doing the thing. But when he's realized that that is part of the gimmick of his career, and he's also like an adrenaline junkie and stuff, and he's ended up doing things that sort of distract from the film and make you think about the making of the film, that's where it's kind of gone too far. And what you said there about like people sticking around too long, like you got the guy from Langley, like they have this amazing, for me, a really welcome addition to the movie of like, he lives in this cabin and this island stuff, but it's like, now he's in the next location. Okay, he made sense in that scene, but now him and his wife are like core members of the team in the next place, and everyone's got to kind of get dragged along. This is classic, like, for some reason I always called Fast and the Furious Final Fantasy. I don't know why, but Fast and the Furious thing of like, whether you were an enemy or you were a hostage or whatever, like eventually you're just part of the fucking baggage of this team, and we're going to bring you along. I agree. I think it's generic, and it often doesn't work. And at this point now, when you've lost Jeremy Renner, you've lost Rebecca Ferguson, you've lost Ving Rhames, you've lost the likes of Alec Baldwin, who were like kind of like minor parts of the engine, and you still have to kind of bring up the numbers again to that ensemble. It is not necessarily the best state that the franchise has ever been in terms of like the company of players. But I guess that's just mission, that's how it works. And I hope you're wrong that we're going to get like a movie stewarded by, or at least like with Shea Wiggum as like the CI, or like the guy, the suit, and everyone other than Tom Cruise being like the team. Like that, these motherfuckers cannot carry a movie. Like these movies are awful if you take away Tom Cruise. I'm talking about the last two movies. There's no way that you can strip Tom Cruise out of the Reckoning movies, if you want to call them that, and there being anything of value left behind. So I really hope they don't make a play for that. They could have done that when they had Jeremy Renner. There's various times they could have done that. I think the safer thing, if they want to get rid of Cruise, or if Cruise wants to get rid of them, is reboot. Like, just at the end of the day, Ethan Hunt is an addition. Like, Jim Phelps is the original hero of the show. So go back and make a mission reboot with a new person, or with a young Jim Phelps or something. Truthfully, I don't know that this franchise has much value without Cruise. Like, sure, it might work. There's been a few spy franchises, the Bourne franchise, the James Bond franchise, but if you take away Cruise from this, I don't think that there's like much essential qualities to the franchise that make me think it would be good. But at the same time, it's an IP, so it's going to get made. Like, I feel the same way about James Bond, to be honest. Like, there's going to be a James Bond movie probably in the next 5 years. It won't have Daniel Craig. It probably won't have any of the creative team. I know Amazon have now taken ownership of that. And if you just boil James Bond down to like an Aston Martin and shaken not stirred and misogyny or whatever, like there's no reason for me to go and be like, I need to get more of that shit. And that's kind of how I feel about Mission Impossible. They'll have, this is your mission, should you choose to accept it. They'll have the masks. But if you're just giving me a mediocre spy action thriller, then I don't care. And I think what James Bond has become is like, you got your Casino Royales, you got your Golden Eyes, and then you've got your 80% of Bond movies that are awful. Without Cruise, I feel like that's where Mission goes now. You'll have maybe the next one, they'll put shitloads of effort in, they'll make a good movie, and then the sequel to that will be much, much worse, and the sequel to that will be awful, and then they'll get another young actor in, and maybe that's how it will go. I don't know. And what you were saying there about Ilsa Faust and Ethan Hunt having an on-screen kiss that was cut from the movie, that's really interesting. It's intriguing. I think like these movies have always, just like James Bond, had the romance element, or the like Bond girl element, be a major part of the film. But unlike Bond, where he always sleeps with the girls and he kisses them, and it's, you know, he probably sleeps with like 3 girls per movie in the case of James Bond. With Mission, they don't really do that. And initially they were doing it more, but as the movies went on, it became almost like a glaring difference. You got Mission 3, where he doesn't have a whole bunch of girls he sleeps with. He's got a wife. And it's like, okay, that's very different, but it's really cool. And it, you know, it's one of the best things about that film. And then when you go past that with Ilsa Faust, it's like this woman that he really respects and has like, they've got a huge relationship connection, like a friendship type thing. But no matter how much they go towards that romance angle, it's always just them like kissing like their partners in espionage and stuff. It's like an embrace and stuff. They don't actually ever get to that Bond girl type of thing. Like they're like equals, and obviously that's amazing, but it's interesting stark difference to the way these spy things usually go. Usually it's like, let's make it his girlfriend or whatever, so that then when she's in peril, it's like we can add that element to it. And the fact that it ended up on the cutting room floor, the kiss that was in, I don't know if it was Dead Reckoning or Fallout, but it makes me wonder whether that was Macquarie shooting a whole bunch of shit, not knowing what kind of movie he's making, and then that was a thing that slowed down the pacing, or whether it ended up in the cutting room floor for the same reason it hasn't ended up in these movies in general, and it hasn't, you know, he doesn't kiss Haley Atwell or whatever, because there's some other external reason why Cruise doesn't want to do that in his movies anymore, or in this movie, or in the I don't know. It always feels, and I don't want to focus too much on this because it's a minor part of my experience with the films, and it's not a big deal or anything. But I do notice in these films that he always goes right up to the actual physical, like, relationship, romance, sexual connection, and then stop short of it, and it's always kept back in this more platonic space. So, but you never know with these movies whether there's a gap in something because it's a decisive, like, screenwriting strategy, or it's just like, fuck, that thing doesn't fit in anymore. Well, you know, like Luther, was there a scene where he was explained as being ill, or was it just, you know, you never know what's a decision or what's just like that thing had to go. But yeah, anyway, I'm glad that we've got another mission out of him, considering, you know, Ghost Protocol was supposed to be like phasing him out of the franchise, and that was probably more than 10 years ago. One more sharp, focused, standalone mission movie would be great. I mean, I say one more, I'd take a few more. He seems incredibly vital still in this one. But I think next protocol for me is probably a trip back to Dougray Scott in Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, it's amazing that I had the exact same lateral thinking, I believe they call it, as you, where I'm thinking, okay, well, I need to go back and watch Mission Impossible 2 as well. And after watching Final Reckoning, which is a very Marvel type way of expanding a universe and tying in a universe, maybe a John Woo standalone movie, hopefully, will be more like a Brian De Palma vision than this Macquarieism we've had for a while. And we often cite Mission Impossible the first one as an auteur. But now that I think about it, John Woo being an auteur of the second one, which was what I didn't like when I saw it only once, years and years ago. So now I'm in a headspace that sounds good to me after these movies. So if there's any chance of me liking it, it's going to be now. And I can absolutely fill you in on why the kiss scene got cut, because I read it from a very credible article where they go into it. So first of all, it was in Fallout. Secondly, Rebecca Ferguson improvised the scene in one stage of the movie, and then Macquarie, I think it was Macquarie, was like, okay, that's good. Let's do that again. So after that, they worked it in again and again and again, like the same scene to shoot it, because they started laughing after the improv scene, and then they had to shoot it for real, so they kept on doing it. Then Macquarie decided to cut the scene because it made Rebecca Ferguson's character look weak, and it made Tom Cruise's character seem like he was holding more of the cards. So it's interesting, and I actually prefer the lack of romance and usually going down the side of platonic in these movies. I also kind of like how that's consistent with the arc of his wife, where he didn't really want to get that close to somebody again in that way, how it's used against him. I can't remember if he has a love interest in Maverick or not. I know he has a love interest with Jennifer, whatever her name is, but I can't remember if they sealed the deal on that. The quote, "Love is on the spectrum." But yeah, as much as I like the stunt of the two planes in this one, I didn't like it nearly as much as you. I'm much more like the one in Rogue Nation. And obviously they've got different stakes that's going on. One is the opening of a movie, like a kind of Bond cold opening. And this one is a little bit air showy to me, a little bit bloated. But I'm not going to be critical of it just to make a point to say I didn't love it as much as you. But what I much more loved was the Rogue Nation one. It's in its simplicity and its conception. I just rewatched it there again as it cuts back to Jeremy Renner as Benji's doing the opening the door, and then this other door opens, and it just gives you a great extra angle at an already great scene. And it's just the simplicity of that extra shot on the outside that adds so much to everything that's going on there. It's a brilliant scene. It's funny. I was just after looking up the Mission Impossible TV series, and apparently it was brought back again in the 80s. And when you mentioned that the Ethan Hunt character is just one aspect of Mission Impossible, he's not even a character in Mission Impossible. I never knew this until just now, but apparently Ethan Hunt is just enough for the movie. He's not even a character in the TV show. So they can really go back to basics. And I'll do you one more. Jim Phelps isn't even in the first season of Mission Impossible. He only comes into it in the second. The 6 seasons overall. So he is the main assembler of the team at that point. So we're talking about, if you're talking about Mission Impossible 1, Ethan Hunt isn't even in the TV series, and Jim Phelps didn't even come into it until the second season. I remember asking my uncle what did he think of the Mission Impossible movie, and he said he really liked it, but one thing he felt hurt by, genuinely, was that Jim turned out to be the bad guy. And I remember him saying the one aspect I didn't like was that Jim was the bad guy. Jim was always a sound man, and for him to do that, he felt really betrayed by the twist, which says how great the twist must have been if you were a fan of the TV show. But yeah, let's go to Mission Impossible 2. Let's see what Cruise gives us in that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that Ethan was in the show. I just meant that he wasn't the star of the show. I've always known that show to be associated with Jim Phelps. So it's interesting to hear that he's not even in the first season of it. I'm tempted after this conversation to go back to the actual, or for the first time to the TV show. But realistically, it's very, very unlikely to hold my attention at this point. But it could be a little curiosity to throw on, just see if it's any good. Yeah, MI2 is the one. Let's hit that next.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.